Bucha, the Ukrainian town seized by Russian troops soon after President Putin ordered his invasion. After Russian forces left the town, bodies were discovered, scattered along a street, drawing widespread condemnation in the West. Our Ukraine correspondent Hugo Bashega reports.
It's been a year since Russian forces fled Bucha, a town that is now known as the site of one of the worst atrocities committed in this war. Russian soldiers are accused of torturing, raping and executing civilians. Officials say more than 400 people were killed. This is Yablunska Street. Dozens of bodies were found here in images that shocked the world. And residents who stayed witnessed the brutality of the occupying forces.
They created a torture chamber in that house. A man who tried to escape was shot. People were tortured in the basement. No one was allowed in. I passed by the house and I heard screams and the sound of gunshots. A friend of my son was carrying food for his parents. He was caught by the Russians. They gouged his eyes out. His ears and nose were cut off. He was later found dead with his hands tied.
There's now a massive effort to rebuild what's been destroyed, but the memories of what happened here will never be forgotten.
Well, we can talk to Hugo now and go live to Bucha. Hugo, we can see you there today, 1 year on. What is it like now?
Yeah, Karen, so there is, as I said, a massive effort to rebuild what's been destroyed, the roads, shops, houses, but obviously something that cannot be rebuilt is the psychological impact, the trauma caused by the atrocities that were committed here. So international investigators, prosecutors, human rights activists are trying to collect evidence of possible war crimes. Bucha is perhaps ground zero for Russia's crimes here in Ukraine. It is a city that will forever be remembered as the site of some of the worst atrocities that have been committed here in this country. We came here to Yablunska Street, came back here to the street because everybody remembers the images of the bodies that were found here and the allegations of torture, also the rape allegations. And I think everybody here witnessed the atrocities, the brutality of the occupation here in Bucha.
Hugo, as we see the morning traffic going past you, it is almost unthinkable to think and imagine what happened in that street behind you.
Exactly, and I think this is why international investigators are trying to collect as much evidence as possible. And I think President Zelensky has been saying that any kind of resolution to the conflict needs to involve the creation of a special tribunal to prosecute those involved in the crimes that have been committed here. And I think yesterday, ahead of this day, he said that the fact that Bucha, Irpin and other towns here around the capital were liberated were a symbol of the fact that Ukraine would win this war. And obviously people here trying to move on, but they know that people are still suffering in places that remain under occupation, and they know that the war is far from over.
Yeah, and you mentioned people are trying to move on. How much of life has been able to get back to some kind of relative normality, given that all this happened so recently?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously the trauma, the memories of everything that happened here remain with the residents of Bucha and all the places that were under occupation. And many of those places have been under constant attacks by Russia. Remember, Russia continues to launch drones and missiles, continue to target cities away from the front lines. But I think not only here in Bucha, but in many other places where the Ukrainians have been able to take back from the Russians, there is an effort to perhaps turn the page, to rebuild what's been destroyed. We should have a ceremony here later today to mark this occasion. We should hear from President Zelensky again and remarks to mark this first anniversary. But again, we are here in Bucha today as the Ukrainians are preparing a counteroffensive to try to take back territory. If you look at the map of this country, around a fifth of this country's territory remains under occupation. There is a massive challenge ahead for the Ukrainian military. So perhaps people are celebrating here today that this city, this town has been liberated, but they know that thousands of Ukrainians are still living under the brutality of the occupying forces.
Hugo, thank you. Hugo Bashega, great to talk to you there back in Ukraine.